This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor, and welcome. It is Friday. Friday is the day on Defiance Daily that we let down our hair a little bit. We talk about the MAGA losses of the week. We award the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award to his biggest suck-up in Washington of the week. And we also talk about a few critically important stories. And we have a special guest with us today to do all of it. We will be joined soon by the great Glenn Kirschner, our favorite legal eagle. I don't know if I can say that. There's a lot of great legal eagles out there, but Glenn is among the best of them. He runs the Justice Matters podcast and Substack, and he's an all-around patriotic American. We are excited to go through the stories with him and the MAGA losses. But first, I just want to say this. This has been a week, folks. If you didn't read my essay about it this morning, a week in which people have made a decision. People, institutions, and nations have made a decision, and that is to stop complying with Donald Trump and start defying Donald Trump. Whether it was Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook this week, who fired back at the White House over efforts to try to get her kicked out of the Federal Reserve, or whether it was institutions like the Stars and Stripes newspaper that the Trump administration has been trying to censor, and the employees there that have sued Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration on First Amendment grounds, or nations, allies, friends to the north, like Canada, who are defying Donald Trump's threats and calling his bluff. We're at a watershed moment here, folks. It has become the default thing to do, to defy instead of to comply. And that's because that courage was crowdsourced, not from the top, not from elites, but from people like you. If you want to be a part of that effort, that is why we exist. That's why we launched this nonprofit. Go sign up for free at defiance.org to find out how you can defy every single week, or become a member to be one of the folks who has made that possible, who has supported these lawsuits, who supported these efforts of accountability, supported efforts to protect our elections. You can do that. You can be a part of that. Check that out at defiance.org. I want to bring in my co-host for today. Maritza is with us, I think, from a special location. Ooh, what's this location?
Ooh. I'm in my girlfriend's car. We're on our way to actually meet up with John Tester, and we did not make it to our destination in time. So I'm in a parking lot, actually outside of a McDonald's.
That is one of my favorite places to do the podcast but usually for me, like a Sheetz or a Wawa parking lot is where I tend to do it if I'm on the road.
We don't have those in Montana. We don't have those in Montana. In fact, I was going to go to a Starbucks and it went out of business apparently. So we're at McDonald's.
If you decide in the course of today's program to go into McDonald's and order, I think we would enjoy being with you. I mean, maybe when we get to the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award, because in honor of whoever wins that prize, since we don't send them the shoes anymore, maybe you could get a Big Mac for them, because Trump is such a big McDonald's consumer. We should think about that.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I feel like somebody I know, there's a story here, and I'm going to rack my brain. Somebody I know used to send somebody Big Macs in like envelopes, and I need to remember this story because I think I'm pretty sure it was political. So I'll figure it out.
That sounds delicious. Yes. Before we get into the fun of the week, Maritza, which is how this pro-dictator movement continues to own itself over and over. We've had to dedicate a whole day to that on Defiance Daily because there are so many examples of it. But first, we want to bring up a serious story, which has been one we have been tracking for a very long time, and for reasons you'll understand in just a moment. It has been a little over a month since Hennepin County, that is the county in Minnesota that houses the capital, Minneapolis. It's been over a month since they got this evidence related to the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy earlier this year. And just to catch everyone up, after the Trump administration kicked state officials out of the investigations, just weeks after those shooting deaths occurred, the evidence that was needed there to go prosecute the individuals responsible. The things like the body cameras and the statements, and even Renee Good's actual SUV were handed over from federal prosecutors to Minnesota investigators. But little has been known about the developments since then. But we may have just been given a little glimpse of what is to come. And the question is, will there finally be accountability? Well, yesterday, the lead prosecutor there, Mary Moriarty, confirmed on MS Now to Morning Joe that there is enough evidence to make a decision on charging in the Renee Good and Alex Preddy cases. Now, Maritza, I will say, this is a little bit tricky because Mary didn't, or probably cannot, come out and directly say that charges are coming. She's a prosecutor in the middle of an investigation, so she's got to be careful about what she says publicly. So rather than have us try to, read between the lines and read the tea leaves here, I just want to play the clip for all of us and get your reaction to it on the other side.
You have all the evidence that was taken away.
We have a lot of it. And I want to say to people, as a prosecutor, we normally, in any case, probably don't have every piece of evidence we wish there were. Sometimes that includes video, sometimes it includes physical evidence. For us and any prosecutor, the issue is always, given what we have, is that enough to make a decision? And I believe at this point, we do have enough evidence to make a decision.
I do note on the list of evidence that you've now received police body camera footage. I think there was some question about whether ICE agents are even wearing body cameras. The one agent we saw in the publicly available video in the Renee Good case had a phone in his hand as if he was recording it himself. So were the agents who fired the shots wearing body cameras?
In the Preddy case, some were. So I can tell you that we have reviewed that body camera. That was one of the things that we didn't have. And so we were trying to assess, which is not a position we're usually in, what might that evidence show? What if? And we now have that evidence. And so that's been extremely helpful. We have multiple views of what happened here.
Maritza, I've got an opinion, but what did you hear?
Yeah, well, obviously, to me, I wish Glenn were here because he could. I know he's joining us momentarily, but I really would love to hear what he thinks too, being a former prosecutor. But I think that obviously, Mary Moriarty is a very smart woman, and they have something. There must be something that they have. And like you said, they're in the middle of this. They can't show all of their cards. And remember, when she was on with us not too long ago, I asked her, what's the difference between the case that they are charging and those two cases? And they didn't have full access to all of the evidence in the Alex Preddy and Renee Good cases. But yeah, they just got custody of her car, of Renee Good's car. And certainly, Miles, I'm from Hennepin County. I grew up there, and I went in. I actually was there the day Alex Preddy was killed. And the amount of people who are on the scene nearby, there were so many. And yes, we've seen a handful of clips and videos, but I certainly don't believe we've seen everything that was taken. So I will be very curious to see how this all plays out and what evidence comes forward that we have not yet seen.
Well, feel free, folks, if you're listening right now, drop your comments into the chat. Let us know what you think Mary Moriarty was saying. I'm just speculating here. I got a sense from her tone. I got a sense from her body language that they are ready to deliver justice in these cases. And I'll also say, I understand the extraordinary frustration that people have felt that charges have not been brought. First and foremost, that frustration and that ire goes towards the Trump administration. The federal government is supposed to investigate its own. It's supposed to have the FBI look into these killings and reach a charging decision. Clearly, this has been punted. The administration has seemingly done everything possible to defend ICE's conduct in Minnesota rather than acknowledge American citizens were murdered in the streets and prosecute them. And so Mary Moriarty, the local district attorney has had to take this on. And I know there's also been frustration with her, that you've had folks on social media say, what's going on? Why hasn't she issued a decision? Well, look, I'm not a part of the investigation, but I will say from the videos that we all saw of those killings, while it was obvious that American citizens were assaulted, to go charge someone with murder, take Alex Preddy. In that case, you need to know who fired the shots, when. There was a scrum of people around him, right? You need every possible angle. You need that official evidence. You need the forensics. You need those things to go charge in a court of law. And I think we also get too caught up in what Donald Trump wants us to be caught up in, the court of public opinion. He has tried to make the court of public opinion more important than courts of law, where people are just reflexively eager for someone to play judge, jury, and executioner. Right there, tweet it. Can we have charges at the speed of a tweet? What I appreciate about Mary Moriarty is that she continues to spell that out very patiently. They want to do the right thing. And it further cements that this is not some political DA that's making charging decisions on the basis of politics. She's following the law. And it's also, Maritza, why I will add, we are so honored to have collaborated with her. Mary Moriarty is one of the members of the coalition that Defiance.org members helped incubate and launch, the Project for the Fight Against Federal Overreach, FAFO. This is a coalition of prosecutors around the country that have come together to share best practices on how to hold the federal government accountable for federal overreach, how to bring charges in a case like this. Mary is sharing her expertise outside of Minneapolis with prosecutors around America who are dealing with this problem of the Trump administration overreaching into states and localities and abusing federal power, in some cases, killing innocent people. So hats off to Mary for that, but also hats off to Defiance.org members. You are literally the reason this has been made possible, to get these prosecutors up to speed on what they need to do to enforce the law and uphold the Constitution if the federal government does not. Maritza, this is a story that we keep going back to because it is inspiring that if people lie, it can have a real impact.
And one thing I'll add to, just for a little bit of, on the ground information, we saw the videos. I don't know how many, I watched those videos over and over and over, every new angle I could find, every aspect I could find that I hadn't seen before. But here's the deal. You all know this. When this was going on, when Alex Preddy was killed, the temperatures in Minnesota were about 20 below zero actual temperature. It was frigid. And if you go back and watch the video when he is trying to help the woman up off of the ground, I was there. I basically stood outside of that spot, on that spot, for a week after that happened. And the amount of ice buildup right there was so thick. It was at least 6 inches thick as far as being on the layer, and it went out probably 2 to 3 feet into the street. And so I hope that we read more about the conditions, because for them to say that Alex Preddy was in some kind of compromising position for the officers, you could barely walk across that ice, and you could barely, I slipped on that ice every time I tried to cross the street. And so he was trying to help that woman up because it was so difficult, and to be shot and killed the way he was on that ice. Like I said, I think we'll find out a lot more when we see all the evidence, but that was just a piece that I don't think a lot of people understood when they watched that specific video.
Well, before we go into the MAGA losses of the week, I do want to get one person's opinion on this story. He is our guest today. The incredible Glenn Kirschner of Justice Matters is here with us. He is a friend, he is a patriot, and he is someone who I would turn to on this subject. Glenn, you just did a video on this yesterday, breaking down your response to Mary Moriarty's comments on Morning Joe and the story about evidence in this case in the hands of the state and local prosecutors. What's your take? Where do you think that this is headed?
Yeah, so first of all, it's great to be with you, Miles, and to see my friend Maritza here. What a bonus for me. Listen, when I was watching Morning Joe, I try to kind of survey all of cable news and independent news every morning, starting at 5 o'clock or so. And when I saw District Attorney Mary Moriarty say to Mika, we believe we now have enough evidence to make charging decisions, I stopped dead in my tracks, ran to my computer, started writing up my video for the day, because this is a long time coming. Todd Blanche has been hiding, secreting, concealing the evidence that the Minneapolis prosecutors need to make a fully informed prosecutorial decision about whether they should charge the killers of both Renee Good and Alex Preddy with some level of criminal homicide. I'm not saying it's first degree murder, second degree murder. It may be voluntary manslaughter. It may be involuntary manslaughter. But from where this career prosecutor, for 22 years, I handled murder cases in DC, where I sit, I watch those videos, and I'm not privy to all the evidence that DA Mary Moriarty has. Those look like what we call bad shoots, excessive force by those police officers, and they ought to be charged criminally and let the chips fall where they will. But I was so thrilled. I mean, I got the justice goosebumps when I heard DA Moriarty say, we now believe we have enough to make a charging decision. She didn't say what that charging decision will be, but I have to tell you, Miles, I don't want to be cynical here, because everything I've seen from DA Moriarty, she seems like a straight shooter, fair, impartial, apolitical, but really determined. She had to sue the Department of Justice and Todd Blanche to try to wrestle away from them evidence. This was Todd Blanche basically hiding the killers out in his basement, right? It is the functional equivalent of that when you don't give the state prosecutors the evidence that you have that they need to seek accountability. And I think if she believed she had enough evidence to make charging decisions, but thought maybe the evidence did not quite add up to proof beyond a reasonable doubt, she could very easily have said, not being cynical, we have some of the evidence now. We didn't get all of it. It was very long delayed, and delay is the enemy of an investigation because memories fade, witnesses go missing, evidence gets lost. She could have said, there's been such a long delay. We think we have all the evidence, but we don't know yet. That would have been an easy out for her. But I don't think she's the kind of district attorney looking for an out. And I think when she said, we have enough evidence to make those charging decisions, I have to believe, and I hope for the families and for the community out there in Minneapolis, I hope the decisions are, we're going to charge them with some level of criminal homicide.
Well, before you came on, Glenn, I was talking about how, and you've been kind enough to extend us time to talk about this on your program. I was talking about how Mary is one of our founding members of the Fight Against Federal Overreach, FAFO, an organization we incubated at Defiance and is now its own standalone nonprofit. One of the things I think people should realize about this case is, yes, whatever happens, hopefully, is meant to get justice for the families of Good and Preddy, for the people of Minneapolis, but also for Americans everywhere who are experiencing, in some way, shape, or form, extraordinary weaponization of the federal government. And this has to be one of the most, if not the most, symbolic cases since the second Trump administration of that overreach. And if Mary Moriarty is able to bring those charges, if she's able to make charges stick, if she's able to deliver justice here, does it not send a very powerful signal of what the state of defiance is in this country?
Yeah, if you want more of something, decline to hold people accountable. If all of a sudden the Department of Justice announced it was no longer going to investigate or prosecute bank robberies, guess what? There would be an explosion of bank robberies, right? When the Department of Justice de facto announces that ICE agents can kill people with impunity and de facto immunity, what are you going to have? You're going to have ICE agents getting more reckless, more dangerous, more violative of both state law and the constitutional rights of the people, that they are seizing. The Fourth Amendment says you can't seize anybody without probable cause. You're just going to get more and more and more. But you know what? You want to deter conduct? Start holding these mofos accountable for what they're doing. No more, no less. And that's why you're right. This will send an enormous signal of deterrence. Just with the charges alone, we will let the chips fall, and we can talk about what will happen moving forward if a state grand jury indicts them, because I've seen this movie before. I've participated in cases where state prosecutions would be removed to federal court because they were federal officers engaged in this use of force. We can talk about all of that. But you know what? The charging decision in and of itself will send loud and clear a deterrent message. Do not violate our state laws, and do not run roughshod over the constitutional rights of the people to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures.
Amen. Well, I'll remind folks, if you want to support what prosecutors like Mary Moriarty are doing, if you want to make sure more prosecutors around this country are doing what she's doing and standing up to the federal government, that effort that we incubated has now spun off into its own. You can go to federaloverreach.org and you can go support what they are doing to educate other prosecutors to be like Mary Moriarty. I think next week we have our friend Larry Kirschner back on the program, so we'll get an update from him on how all of that's going. But I want to take... Yeah.
Could I ask Glenn one question? And we could do this briefly because I know we have more to get to. But Glenn, when you look at this, and we've heard state officials say, hey, the feds have not worked with us. They have not shared evidence with us. They have not opened up their files to us. Is there any way that could lead to any kind of obstruction charge, or they just supersede it? There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, I like the way you think. And what I'm reminded of is just a couple of weeks ago, the Attorney General for the state of New Mexico, Raul Torres, sued the Department of Justice and Todd Blanche, expressly saying they are blocking our investigation of the crimes that we suspect were committed at Zorro Ranch. They are obstructing. He used that word in an interview. They are obstructing by refusing to share evidence with us, when the norm, and I did this for decades, the norm is that when the feds and the state law enforcement authorities have a common interest in a case, in a defendant, we work together productively. We share information. We often conduct joint investigations. That's the best of both worlds. I will take the great ideas of state court prosecutors any day if I'm prosecuting, for example, federal RICO cases. But Todd Blanche, again, is hiding out all of the evidence that the state authorities need to investigate the crimes at Zorro Ranch. He is protecting the Epstein co-conspirators who are suspected of having committed crimes in New Mexico. So, the Attorney General from New Mexico used the word obstruction and block and impeded. Now, could that lead to obstruction charges? Now you're getting into, supremacy clause arguments, but you know what? We won't know unless we try. And that's why I am all about trying to bring the righteous cases, regardless of, whether success is guaranteed, which it never is, or even likely. You bring righteous cases, you fight like hell, and you let the chips fall. You let a judge decide, or you let a jury decide. And that is, listen, that will define the accountability mission come January 2029.
Amen to that. Well, I will say this, there's going to be a lot more on this front. And Glenn, we're going to look forward to bringing you back to have a conversation about this one, because I suspect we're going to get big news here. And it sounds like it is in the not too distant future. But I want to take you into Fun Town, Glenn, and I want to get your reaction to some of the MAGA losses of the week. This is what we do on Fridays. We try to talk about the cell phones inside the pro-dictator movement and some of the hypocrisy so people can understand, as scary as all of this is, these are still people driving a clown car and often crashing that clown car into the median. And so the first one that I want to put to you today, Glenn and Maritza, is what has been happening in Florida with Ron DeSantis. Mr. Ron DeSantis, save taxpayer dollars, combat fraud, and protect the people of Florida against profiteering. Well, I don't know if you've been following this. Things don't look good for Ron DeSantis and his wife, who have a bit of a $10 million problem on their hands. I don't know if you've been following this one, Glenn. Are you familiar with an organization called Hope Florida?
I saw some of the reporting. I have not done a deep dive, and I'm not going to leap right to my conclusion. If it turns out to be that Ron DeSantis, committed all kinds of felony fraud, we can talk about where things might lead in the near term, but I haven't done a deep dive.
But you wouldn't be surprised necessarily. Well, I'll bring our listeners up to speed, because Ron DeSantis's wife, Casey DeSantis, created this organization you see there on the screen called Hope Florida, and this was supposed to be an initiative, as I understand it, to help families in need by connecting them with churches and charities and other community resources that could step in and support them. But that nonprofit foundation somehow ended up with $10 million from a state Medicaid settlement. And now a grand jury has taken a look at what happened to the taxpayer money that ended up in the coffers of Hope Florida. And according to a leaked copy of that grand jury report, the DeSantis administration misappropriated those funds as part of what the grand jury called, quote, a sophisticated scheme to fund political activities. Glenn, if you're governor of Florida and you see that report, that doesn't sound very good at the outset, right?
No, he's in good company. It sounds a little like his friend Rick Scott, to whom no accountability came. So, you said the magic words, grand jury. And if you have grand jurors sitting as the conscience of the community, Miles, in my experience, they are apolitical people. They come from all walks of life in the jurisdiction where the crime is alleged to have occurred. And boy, have we seen grand jurors acting as guardrails against prosecutorial abuse, overreach, and outright criminality when it comes to people like Janine Pirro, who I'm happy to report was reported to Bar Council for ethics violations today, both in New York and DC, long overdue. So the grand jury hopefully will do its work, will reach a conclusion about whether a crime was committed, and if so, whether there's enough evidence to make out probable cause to indict the person or people who committed them. Now, am I skeptical with Ron DeSantis sitting atop the government in Florida that he might find ways to put the kibosh on anything that might visit him, visit his family members, visit his administration? Yeah, I'm skeptical. I would also ordinarily say, but of course, they probably violated any number of federal laws, because undoubtedly there are interstate components. We feds like to have the broadest possible jurisdiction. So when we can charge people with something like perpetrating a fraud by using a, quote, communication facility, what does that mean? It means if you make a phone call or use the internet across state lines, the feds might be able to get you for what seems like state conduct, state crimes. But look at the state of our Department of Justice. You've got Todd Blanche siding with the criminals, over and over and over again. Would he really go after Ron DeSantis? I think it very unlikely, unless Donald Trump perceives Ron DeSantis as an enemy of his. Then it's on whether you committed crimes or not. So I'm a little skeptical. I'm going to take a wait and see approach to whether there are indictments returned. But if there are, then it's on. And as long as you get an honest judge presiding over the proceedings, the folks who arguably perpetrated this fraud, they're going to be in some hot water.
Well, Maritza, before we go to the next one, I want to get your quick take on the optics here. I mean, put aside the legal piece. The crux of this is that Hope Florida took that $10 million and gave it to two other nonprofits, but $8.5 million of it ultimately went to a political action committee that then sent the money to the Florida Republican Party and a Ron DeSantis political action committee. You can't overstate, in my view, how bad that looks for Ron DeSantis's wife to run a nonprofit that takes taxpayer dollars, that gives that money to an organization that then pushes it back around into a pro Ron DeSantis political organization. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Are the optics fine for him on that? Is this now acceptable?
No, I think the optics are really bad, right? I mean, like we've been talking about and Citizens United and their president, Tiffany Muller, who was on Defiance earlier this week. You know, they have polling done nationwide that shows more than 90% of voters in this country think that corruption in politics is a really serious problem. Okay. And so, you know, I hear John Tester ask this question all the time. He does a lot of events trying to get big money and dark money out of politics. And he always asks, how many people in the room think we need more money in politics? Nobody ever raises their hand. So to have taxpayer dollars go to that is already not going to be good in the court of public opinion. But then you take a look at what that money was supposed to go to provide health insurance for poor children. Yeah, not a great look, Governor DeSantis. Like, it's not a great look, especially when we're all about the children, right? Keeping our children healthy and being pro-life. Like, not a great look.
Not a great look. Well, so that's an obvious MAGA loss of the week. This is not trending well for MAGA Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. But I want to ask you, Glenn, about another one. I don't know if you've seen this, but we have been saying for the past few weeks that it's our prediction that Republican candidates will start running to the hills away from Donald Trump as we get closer to the election. And for the very obvious reason that his poll numbers are an absolute nightmare for them. And I mean, this is the full nightmare scenario. Donald Trump's polling in the low 30%, which is like catastrophic territory for the figurehead of a party. That's piece number one. Piece number two is he keeps trying to chain himself to his party's candidates. They are holding this Texas Republican summit ahead of the midterms, a off-cycle convention in 2 weeks in Dallas, Texas, that they are calling, quote, Trump-a-palooza. They're expecting all of their candidates around the country to gather at a thing called Trump-a-palooza. So his numbers are in the shitter. He's trying to bear hug all of these candidates. And then on top of it, Trump has basically refused to open his wallet, his $400 million war chest, political war chest. He's given less than 1% of it to Republican candidates. So he's giving them no money, but all the baggage going into the midterm election. So we have been predicting that Republican candidates will run for the hills, and it does seem like they are. They're starting to scrub their websites of Donald Trump's name. I'll give you the details, two examples in just a second, but I'm wondering, Glenn, if you think this is the extent of it, or if you think these candidates are going to go beyond just scrubbing Trump from their websites and maybe show a little backbone and actually criticize the president of the United States.
Yeah, Miles, I'm not a political pundit, and I don't try to play one on TV, but I've got an opinion. And this is going to tell you a little bit about how I was raised. As you were describing these Republican candidates trying to push their way, push away from Donald Trump, I grew up on Bugs Bunny. So I see Pepe Le Pew, the skunk, who keeps trying to hug and kiss the female skunk, and she's always pushing him. And that's what I envision, right? That's my frame of reference. So listen, what we know is that all of today's politicians, and I don't even think I'm willing to differentiate between parties, they care about themselves. They care about getting reelected, some of them at any cost. I mean, the politicians, in the Republican Party, former politicians that I admire most are people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who said, you know what? My reelection is not as important as the health and viability of American democracy. And boy, did they put their money where their mouth is. I can disagree with them on issues and on policy, but I can't disagree with their show of patriotism and love of country. And that is what we are missing these days. So I tend to believe that all of these lesser Republican politicians who are seeking re-election are going to do whatever it takes. I've always believed, and it's, again, not being a political expert, that the minute tethering yourself to Donald Trump was more of a liability than an asset, the Republicans would start to say, me, I'm pushing away because I no longer believe I can win re-election by sticking by Trump than if I cut ties with Trump. It's all about, I guess, the calculation regarding the MAGA base and what it means to push away from Trump. But listen, I don't think any of this is going to end well for the Republican Party. I don't think any of it is going to end well for Donald Trump personally or his cabinet members. I do think with everything Trump is throwing at the midterms, trying to interfere with our right to vote, he's going to fail spectacularly because he has a track record of failing spectacularly, even when he tries in multiple ways to interfere with an election's results, like the 2020 election. And boy, he went at that a number of ways, including launching a violent attack on the Capitol, never mind the fake elector scheme and everything else. He's going to fail again. He surrounds himself with imbeciles and incompetence. We're going to overwhelm the polls in all the right ways come the midterms. And then I am so, listen, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm a prosecutor. Everything looks like an investigation and a prosecution. But boy, if we can get our investigations on after the midterms, political investigations, congressional investigations, and use that as the runway to the criminal investigations commencing on January 20th, 2029, we're going to be able to fix what Trump has broken. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a long time. We've actually got to build it back better, with a nod to you know who. We really have to build it back better, not just restore it to what it was.
Well, Maritza, I want to ask you about this. This may not seem like it's a MAGA fail for sure that they're running from Donald Trump, but it may not seem like an epic act of defiance, but it is so telling that these candidates are literally trying to erase their ties to Donald Trump. One of them, and I think we have the screenshots of this, is a guy named Ralph Alvarado. Yeah, there he is. He's running for Congress in Kentucky, and Trump endorsed him in the primary. He ran as a MAGA guy, the whole thing. But once he won the primary, his website, it got a little bit of a makeover. I'm going to show you is this the before? I think this is the before. I think we have the before. The home right, yeah, right there. It brands him, as you can see there, an America First fighter. And he's got, I think, a photo of himself with Donald Trump, or a photo of Trump there on the site. Listed in his bio, he says he's one of President Trump's earliest supporters. But now take a look at that website. This is what the website now says. It changed. He's not a Donald Trump America First fighter. He's an independent. All it took was a refresh of the website, and he's no longer tied to Donald Trump. He's just this guy, he goes right down the middle. He changed overnight. Yeah. He's a right down the middle independent. But this is not the only one. We won't go through all of them, but you're seeing this with the other candidates where they're saying, I am a Trump Republican on the page, and the text is just gone now. They're scared shitless of being tied to this guy.
Because they know they're the ones out on the ground with the voters. They're the ones talking to people saying, please vote for me. And the constituents are saying, I can't afford gas. I can't afford my groceries. I'm worried about my kid being shipped off to a war with Iran after we were promised we would have no more endless wars. They're the ones talking to the voters and saying, please support me. And the voters are saying, you have a lot of baggage. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing this. I've seen it a little bit with a couple of candidates here in Montana, not all of them, certainly, but there are some real issues in middle America and rural America also, by the way, with our family farmers that these elected officials are really going to have to answer to, because they represent the people. And I think maybe some of them are starting to realize that, and it's going to be a lot harder to sell the people voting for them or voting for their opponents on another endless war with Iran, more tariffs. I mean, for goodness sakes, we haven't even talked about renaming Lake Ontario. I mean, this is the stuff we're focused on. And meanwhile, people are begging for help putting gas in their cars. It's just, you couldn't be more out of touch if you think that they're worried about the name of one of our Great Lakes.
Well, I will say this is a MAGA loss of the week. They're running from the guy. And so our response is we're going to move on to our final MAGA loss of the week. Glenn, interested in your take on this one. I don't know if you've seen this film that was referenced, but I thought this was such a classic MAGA self-own. This was something that happened on social media at the Department of Education, or the last dregs of the Department of Education, that they have systematically gutted without the authorization of Congress. Would love your opinion on that. There does seem to be underway an illegal effort to eliminate a federal department that was created by Congress in ways that are too cute by half. We can get to that. But I don't know if either of you guys are World War II media buffs or have seen the great Gary Oldman film, The Darkest Hour, where he plays Winston Churchill. I don't know if you saw that one. A lot of makeup, but he's a great Winston Churchill. In that movie, there's this scene where members of his war cabinet are pushing him to negotiate with Hitler. They're saying, just get into negotiations with the guy. Let's solve this thing. And there's a great line where Gary Oldman responds to the effect of, he says, you can't reason with a tiger when your head is in the tiger's mouth. And that's kind of been memed. It's a clip that people use. Well, somebody over at the Department of Education saw this clip and thought, wow, that sounds just like us. And they posted it. You can see it here. They posted it with the caption, no one does it like us, and a tiger emoji, implying that they are the tiger. Now, I want to ask, what's wrong with that comparison? Anyway, did you see the obvious? They are implying they are Hitler in this scenario. And so this went viral on social media. There was backlash with people all throughout the comments pointing out, you are saying you are the Hitler character in this story. Department of Education deletes it and posts afterwards that the staffer did not understand the context of the video. This was a funny cell phone, but I'll tell you, Glenn, what this made me think about is how many people that the Trump administration has hired who haven't just expressed controversial views. They have called themselves Nazis. People who've been hired to serve in the Department of Justice who've said they've got a little bit of a Nazi streak in them. So there's the cell phone, but I also think there's something deeper that this hints at inside the Trump administration. Your take?
It's a self-own, but it was probably the intended message. I mean, these are not mistakes by Trump with respect to who he brings in to his cabinet, who he surrounds himself with. These are hateful people. These are bigoted people. These are some, as you say, Miles, self-described Nazis. And I am somebody who actually resists comparing Trump and his regime to Nazi Germany, to Hitler and his regime. I think there are some strong parallels, but I also feel like that does a disservice and is disrespectful to what Nazi Germany actually did. Now we're creeping closer and closer with, detention facilities that look a whole hell of a lot like concentration camps. We are letting federal officers kill not just undocumented immigrants, but documented immigrants, American citizens. So I feel like the comparison becomes more apt. And I actually fear that Trump likes the comparison to Hitler. I mean, he loves dictators, his word, right? He and Kim Jong-un swap love letters. He obviously is enamored of Putin. And, some might say Hitler is the ultimate strong man. He's the ultimate evil in this world. But I think Donald Trump likes being compared to those folks. So I don't think these are mistakes. I think maybe they're trial balloons, but listen, that's why I'm a broken record, but I go back to, if we don't hold all these people accountable, then we're giving our republic away. I sometimes I say, if we fail the accountability mission again, we failed it in 74 with Nixon, we failed it in 2020 and 2021 with Trump and the whole hierarchy of the insurrection. If we fail it again, I don't think we deserve to keep our republic. And, deserve is an academic point, because I don't think we will keep our republic.
Well, it makes me think back to conversations that my former boss had with Donald Trump. And I shared your view, and I do share your view, Glenn, on the comparisons of the moment we're into Nazi Germany. We are not in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, but it is important to look at some of those parallels. But then John Kelly had talked about conversations he had had with the president, where the president said to him, not just on one occasion, repeatedly, Trump was trying to make the point to John Kelly that Hitler did some very good things. He was almost looking for validation from his White House chief of staff that Hitler was a good guy who he should be compared to. And on other occasions, Trump said to John Kelly, I want the types of generals Hitler had. If you've studied World War II, the types of generals Hitler had were the types of generals comfortable with mass extermination of civilians, the types of generals who were completely comfortable and demonstrated alacrity for war crimes. So I think you're right, Glenn. It's not just these things should be looked at as, oops, they posted the wrong thing. They have a boss who is encouraging references to the leader of the Third Reich. And that's why I find it so remarkable when MAGA bristles and says, how dare you? Because my response is, well, have you sat in the room with him where he expresses love for Hitler? Because his White House chief of staff apparently did. That's pretty scary stuff. This is who these people...
There was reporting earlier this summer, and I just pulled it up because I wanted to remember it. But there was an author that a historian that compared Trump to Hitler and Mao and Stalin, and Trump actually wrote, "Sounds good to me." I mean, these are his words, and so there's not really a lot to decipher here or to decode.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party doesn't say boo about any of it. That is depraved.
Well, and I think that analysis that you mentioned, Maritza, was an analysis that Donald Trump, I think, had said was put together by a top historian, and it was like who was it? It was a former golfer's caddy.
Yeah.
An assessment. Yeah, there's another.
Yeah. I'm sorry, a historian. You're right. Historian.
All right. Yes. Well, in the time we have left with Glenn, if we have Glenn for a couple more minutes, do we, Glenn?
Sure.
I want to take you into the Soulmate Award. You've never been with us for this, right? Fridays are our a little bit lighter day. And every week we've been giving out this award since earlier this spring. You may remember, Glenn, the story from earlier this year in the Wall Street Journal that Donald Trump has been giving out pairs of his favorite shoes, these black Florsheim Oxford dress shoes, to members of his cabinet, his staff. And he does this peculiar, very Donald Trump thing where he doesn't ask them their shoe size. He looks at them and sizes them up. And I'm sure that's some weird psychological thing so he can send them a smaller number to make them feel uncomfortable. And then he awards them a pair of shoes and he asks them to go wear those shoes. He expects them to wear those shoes. And there was that great photo of like 6 members of his cabinet sitting in a line with him, all wearing the shoes. I mean, you can't, we talk about comparisons to autocracies. There's no better comparison than the fact that almost all the major autocrats expected their lieutenants to adopt their actual style, not just their policies. There's Mao, and there's the Mao jacket. There was Saddam Hussein and the mustache. Like, you can go on and on. There's the Soviet Union and the Stalin outfit. They want their staff to mimic them. Donald Trump has this exact same trait. He wants them to wear his shoes, and cabinet members have reportedly grumbled about it because they think they're cheap, shitty shoes. They don't want to wear them. They want to wear their nice shoes. So anyway, that's been happening. It's been giving those out. So what we've been doing, Glenn, is every week picking 3 nominees who are clearly auditioning for a pair of those shoes. And if Donald Trump won't give them the shoes, we give them the shoes. And for a period of time, we were mailing them the shoes afterwards if they were the winner. You won't be surprised by this, Glenn. Some of them returned the shoes. CNN's Scott Jennings was our inaugural winner, and Scott very quickly returned the pair of shoes that he had won. So we now just award this virtually because it's a pain to just keep getting these shoes returned. So we've got 3 nominees this week. I will try to run through them quickly. I want your reactions, you and Maritza, to the nominees this week, and then we'll go through and vote who should receive the pair of shoes. Now, normally, unfortunately, folks who are watching, normally we allow you to vote from home on a website, www.soulmate.vote. We had a technical difficulty today. I don't think you're going to be able to vote on the website. I don't think the nominees got uploaded correctly. And so it'll be up to me and Glenn and Maritza who wins the virtual shoes this week. So first nominee this week we have is Tom Emmer. I don't know if you guys know Representative Tom Emmer. Our first Soulmate nominee is him, and he is the House Majority Whip, and he's from Minnesota. And he apparently missed the memo that Democrats are leading Republicans in the polls heading into the midterms. Representative Emmer went on Fox Business this week to talk about Trump's upcoming Republican convention that we mentioned earlier, the Trumpapalooza, as they're calling it. And here's what he had to say.
What more can you tell us about what you're hearing with regards to this convention? It's, of course, the first of its kind, but more importantly, how do you get Republican voters motivated when you don't have President Trump on the ticket this November?
Regardless of what the other media outlets that would like to try and convince Americans that we're not motivated, Republicans are motivated, and Donald Trump is motivated. The president is the one who goes out and literally performs these rallies. He'll be down in Dallas for this first of a kind mid-term in convention. And the whole idea is to remind people how hard we all worked to try and stop the advance of Marxism and socialism and anarchy that is now the left. With our great president, Donald J. Trump. And I'm very confident that Republicans understand, and all Americans, by the way, Americans understand.
Glenn, I know that you're not a political commentator. I want your reactions to that, though. Tom Emmer auditioning for the award this week?
Yeah, I mean, he's a clown. These people, they know that they're lying. They understand just how bad Donald Trump is for democracy and for the American people. And yet they beclown themselves over and over and over again. You know, and listen, fear is a very powerful motivator. And I do believe, and this is not giving them an out, I think they are afraid that if they split, they'll not only run the risk of losing their office, but their families will be threatened by the MAGA crazies. We've all had that happen. We've all seen it. So, but they beclown themselves. And if you're not strong enough to stand up for the American people or your own constituents, get the hell out of the business.
Get the hell out. Also, I have a correction. Glenn, our producer is extraordinary. Mercedes has managed to get up a mechanism for people to vote this week at strawpoll.com/soulmates, spelled SOLEMATES. Get it? It's a pun like the sole of shoes. Strawpoll.com/soulmates. Go there and feel free to vote on the nominees. But wait, we're going to talk about the last 2 nominees. So you got Tom Emmer there.
I just have a quick question, though, because Tom Emmer said that they saved us from socialism. But how did we convert federal grants into a 10% public equity stake in Intel if they saved us from socialism? I just wanted to know.
It's cooler than socialism, Maritza. They're not using the term comrade. They're just using red hats. They're just leaning into the metaphor in a little bit more cheeky way. So that's Tom Emmer, who is apparently very excited about Trumpapalooza in Texas. Our second nominee is Mike Lawler, Representative Mike Lawler of New York, who had himself a very busy news cycle, you guys, this week. Asked point blank what Republicans are doing right now on health care. He said they strengthened Medicaid by rooting out waste fraud and abuse. That's obviously one way to describe the $1 trillion cuts from Medicaid in legislation that they passed. But then on a second Fox Business spot, Mike was asked about Trump's order to rename Lake Ontario as Lake America, and he said this.
They're doing is they're threatening New York State. They're threatening your state with regards to power and selling power to New Yorkers. Your reaction?
Well, I think for years, obviously, Canada has enjoyed very favorable trade relations with the United States. They've also enjoyed strong economic and security protections by the United States and benefited greatly from proximity to the U.S. I don't think there's any question that whether it's Canada or Mexico or China or other countries around the globe, Americans want fair trade practices. And I think in measure, that is what the president has been trying to do, force these countries into trade renegotiations. I don't think people care about the name of the lake. I do think they care about, obviously, fair trade and certainly energy.
Didn't distance himself from it. Didn't want to upset the president. I have to say one thing. I mean, Glenn, you and I talk about this all the time. The people who know better and say one thing in private and another thing in public. And I've said since the beginning of this that my focus has been on Donald Trump. He is the threat. He is the man weaponizing government, but he has a hell of a lot of enablers. And I was writing this morning that if I've got any education from this whole experience, it's a PhD in revenge studies, but also probably in cowardice studies, is witnessing that cowardice. And I came up with Mike. He's a decent guy. Mike's the type of guy, though, that in the green room and behind the scenes will blast Donald Trump. He thinks Donald Trump is a total clown. I know Mike thinks decisions like this are an absurd abuse of Trump's power. Yet why does he go on television and basically talk like Donald Trump is our savior for doing things like this?
Oh, it's fear, it's weakness, it's cowardice. And although I think he slipped up when he said, I don't think people care about the name of a lake. I could see Donald Trump saying, wait a minute, didn't you see me take my Sharpie and change the name on this little cartoon map? Of course people care. So I think he stepped on it a little bit. But let's go back to Donald Trump. Nothing says strong leadership when another country is bucking you like threatening to rename a body of water. I mean, that is one strong leader we've got there.
Don't you think he just lost at the game of Risk too many times when he was growing up? Like he just lost the game of Risk so much.
There's no way he ever played the game of Risk. There's no way he ever played that game. But Maritza, I wanted to ask you this. Doesn't Donald Trump keep proving, this is a controversy from many years ago from the first Trump administration, doesn't he keep proving to us that he was obviously the guy that took the Sharpie that redrew the storm path of the hurricane that he had said it was going to hit states that the forecasters said it wasn't going to hit. He didn't like to be contradicted. And then there was a Sharpie on the phone board and the White House denied it was him. I think I was the first to reveal. I heard from first person witnesses in the room that it was Donald Trump. Of course it was Donald Trump. And now he's showing us. He's pulling out his Sharpie and renaming lakes. Of course this was the guy.
He loves Sharpies. In fact, he should have been a weatherman in the 70s when they wrote the numbers in Sharpie on the maps. Like that would have been a good career path for him, although he would have just lied about it, whether it was raining, probably.
I bet there are weathermen jobs in federal prisons. We'll talk about that. If there is, happy to put him up for it. So. Our final nominee for the week, and then we'll each quickly vote, is Howard Lutnick. He is our third and final nominee. He's a frequent nominee on this program. I mean, honestly, there are few cabinet secretaries that more assiduously associate themselves. They bear hug and smile about Donald Trump like Howard Lutnick, who put on what one X user rightly called, quote, one of the most pathetic press conferences of all time. He put this on this week outside of a D.C. courthouse. This is what happened. Lutnick was asked why Trump was expecting for the renovation of the Kennedy Center to be fronted if the money wasn't there just yet. Take a listen.
Prudent decision for the board. I listened to the board discuss it. It is very, very prudent. If they said well, maybe I'll do it later, right? Well, maybe he'll raise the money later. That's not the way it works. You make an agreement. If you could shake hands with President Donald J. Trump to raise you $500 million, and your inducement to him, the board's inducing him, saying, I'll acknowledge you if you raise me the money, commit to raise me the money, and I'll acknowledge you. If he commits to raise the money, I'd acknowledge him. I'd do it in a minute. How much do letters cost?
Most credible person in the world, he says. The most credible person in the world. I assume you guys don't agree with that. But we're tight on time, so let's take a vote. Users, while we go through our votes very quickly, you can vote at strawpoll.com/soulmates. You see it there on the screen. Who deserves to be Donald J. Trump's soulmate this week? Who has earned a pair of those shoes? Maritza, ladies first. Let's go to you. Who wins your vote this week?
Oh, I'm just going to say, like, the Lake Ontario stuff is so absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to go with Mike Lawler, because how can you stand there and say, oh, nobody cares about this? Like, this is so ridiculous. This is just like such a waste of time and money.
Unfortunately, I am also going to have to go with Mike Lawler. I do think the other two guys, in their heart of hearts, are deeper, more radicalized, mega MAGA guys. Tom Emmer and Howard Lutnick have been willing to say anything. I get much more frustrated with the people who I know have one private opinion and express another public opinion. I actually think those people are scarier for our democracy. Mike Lawler gets my vote. Glenn, are you willing? This can be a secret ballot, but are you willing to share your vote this week on who deserves the shoes?
I am. You didn't even have to play the clip of Lutnick. He already got my vote when you mentioned his name. I dealt with, killers and rapists and, carjackers and, gang members my whole life. And I don't think they made my skin crawl the way Lutnick makes my skin crawl. And, this is not part of the clip you just played, but when he lied about his relationship with and his contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, and then he brought his wife and children and his nanny, I believe, to Epstein Island. I mean, that man needs to have some accountability coming to him.
Yeah, remember, folks, he lied. He said, we had this weird experience with him at a massage room. And after that, my wife and I decided we'll never interact with that man again. And then it emerges, as Glenn noted.
Yeah.
Not only interacted, I think they went to the island on vacation, or they went on vacation with him on a yacht years later. Didn't get his timelines lined up correctly. See, that's what happens. That's why, folks, general life update for anyone. You want a little piece of advice? Just don't lie from the start. If you don't lie, you'll never get caught in a lie, because it's easy to remember the truth. It's hard to remember a lie.
Melissa is saying that 70% of the viewers agree with Glenn. Melissa's in our comments saying that. Is that
there
true?
It is. Well, way to scoop the final vote.
Sorry.
I don't know. Do we have the results? Put them up. There are the results. This is the winner of the award. Is this week? It is Howard Lutnick. Glenn is right, and Glenn, that's a blowout. You are much more in touch with the pulse of the people than me or Maritza are. Howard Lutnick is the winner. Howard, you get the shoes. You earned the shoes. You have been a frequent nominee for the shoes. And now you finally get to say you're the victor. We like to tell folks, look, no need to go gloat to them. No need to say mean things, but feel free to take a screenshot on strawpoll.com/soulmates. And you're welcome to share it in Howard Lutnick's social media comments to let him know he was the victor this week and he won the shoes. I want to say a big thank you to Glenn for joining us today and for playing along. Fridays are sillier here at Defiance Daily. Glenn, before we go, a couple of things. One, I want you to tell the good people who are listening all around the country where to follow you if they are not already. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. You're one of the most important follows on the internet. Is you are a voice for this moment of the need for accountability. You have been relentless. And so I hope when people hear where they can follow you and tag along, they will actually go do that.
Thank you. You're very kind, Miles. So we have community meetings on Substack nearly every night at about 8:30 Eastern time. And we've just got this great community of justice warriors. We talk about the legal issue of the day. We talk about ways to engage in the fight for the rule of law, for democracy, for the Constitution. And it's free. I never put anything behind a paywall. So come on over to Substack, hop on for free, see if you enjoy it. And then also over on YouTube, I still am posting a daily legal analysis video every day, 7 days a week, most weeks, trying to unravel the legal issue of the day and meet the force of the Trump administration's propaganda, talk about what's really going on. So I think those are the two primary places, Substack and YouTube.
Please do that, folks. Glenn's analysis is remarkable. And I try to join as many community meetings as I can. But the problem, Glenn, the reason you don't see me enough is that's right around when I'm putting baby to bed. So the times you have seen me pop in, I got a reprieve from putting baby to bed. So if it happens, if I get a reprieve, I'm hopping in to Glenn's community meetings, which are worth going to. Final question for the day for you, Glenn, and then you're welcome to jump. And I want Maritza to answer the same question. End of the week, what's got you optimistic going into next week, my friend?
The resilience of the American people and the realization that America has been through some really, really tough times, and democracy has survived, and it's managed to move forward and thrive after each dark period that we have passed through. This is the darkest in our lifetime, perhaps, but I think we're up to the challenge. I think we're going to power through it. I really do, during the midterms. And then I think hopefully we've learned the lesson that without accountability, nothing is possible. So this time, how about we try accountability?
Glenn Kirschner, you would make a terrific replacement for Todd Carte Blanche.
Yes.
I hope someone will.
Let me just say, I'm going to say one thing really quickly, because Glenn Kirschner is one of the just most amazing gems that we have. And he has become a fast friend, and he does so much amazing work. And part of what keeps me hopeful and optimistic about moving forward are people like him and the community that he's created. And I had a chance to spend some time with that community a few weeks ago in DC. And honestly, to know that that many people care so deeply, not just about this country, but the fellow human beings around us, that's why we're here, folks. And that's what matters. And Glenn just embodies that. And we just love him so much. And Nilu, his wife.
Glenn, get out of here. I know you got to get out of here.
Very kind. And let me just say, I'm coming to Missoula because I'm going to see Maritza out there in a few weeks.
Jealous,
Yes.
didn't get the invite. Get out of here, Glenn. Now I'm mad. Thank you, my friend. So, Maritza, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? Why is he coming to Missoula and we're not coming to Missoula?
Well, come to Missoula, Miles. You have an open invitation. You know that. You know that.
It was.
You have an open invitation. Come on out. We actually have. I'm on the board of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center. We have some incredible lectures this fall and into next year. And Glenn is going to come out for one of those lectures. It's so exciting. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Amazing.
We'll do an episode too.
I will associate myself with your comment about Glenn. He's just a great guy, folks. Yeah. I mean, you watch these people, you wonder, who's a pundit, who's a personality, who's in it for the right reason. This guy is in it for the right reasons. Glenn is a terrific guy. Big admirer of his. We're in overtime. It's all the time we have today. As you can see, folks, we got to let Maritza go because she was on the way to see Senator Tester.
I gotta get
and she had to do this from the car. We got to get her on the road. Maritza, thank you for riding sidecar with me today. And you and I are going to have a very fun week next week here on the program. Xander's out of office, and it's going to be a blast. Lot to talk about next week. We've got a Defiance members only meeting next Wednesday. Stay tuned. We'll give you all those updates. But in the meantime, this weekend, as we always say, between now and the next time we see you, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. Thank you, friends.